It was 7:42 a.m., and the rain was falling in relentless, icy sheets over the gray streets of Boston. Claire Jennings stood under the cracked awning of the corner deli, cradling her 3-year-old son, Mason, against her chest. Her shoes were soaked through, her coat too thin for the biting cold. She'd missed the bus, again. The one bus that would have gotten her across town in time to clock in at the diner before the breakfast rush. Her stomach tightened as she imagined her manager's disappointed sigh and the slim envelope of her paycheck shrinking even smaller. But worse than the job, worse than the chill seeping into her bones, was the thought of Mason going another day with less than he deserved. Claire had always been proud. Too proud to ask for help most days. But today was different. She'd skipped dinner last night to stretch what was left for Mason. The fridge had nothing but a bottle of ketchup and half a gallon of milk. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask." She looked around, her breath rising in shaky clouds. Cars streamed past in blurry streaks of red and yellow. Hesitant, heart pounding, she stepped out and raised a trembling hand toward the nearest car, a sleek black SUV idling at the stoplight. The window rolled down smoothly, and behind the glass sat a man in his mid-40s. His jaw was strong but unshaven, his eyes tired but kind, framed by faint lines that spoke of both laughter and grief. His crisp navy suit and expensive watch looked like they belonged in a boardroom, not on this rain-soaked street. "I'm sorry to bother you," Claire stammered, her voice tight with fear and embarrassment. I missed my bus. Is there any chance you could give us a ride? I just need to get across town to Franklin and 3rd. For a second, the man only stared at her, and Claire's stomach twisted. But then, something flickered in his eyes, recognition, maybe. Or understanding. Without a word, he reached over and unlocked the passenger door. "Hop in. I'm heading that way." Claire exhaled shakily, bundling Mason tighter as she slid into the warm car. The man handed back a soft blue blanket from the back seat, wordlessly gesturing for her to wrap Mason in it. Gratefully, she accepted, whispering thanks. They rode in silence for a few long moments, the steady rhythm of the wipers filling the space between them. "I'm Claire," she finally offered. "And this little guy is Mason." The man nodded once, his gaze fixed on the wet road. "Daniel." After a pause, his voice softened. "Tough morning?" Claire gave a hollow laugh, glancing down at Mason's peaceful, sleeping face. "You could say that. Been a tough few years, actually." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "His dad left before Mason was born. I've been doing my best to hold things together, but sometimes it feels like the world is determined to remind you just how alone you really are." She bit her lip, regretting her outpouring to a stranger. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles whitening. "I know that feeling better than I wish I did," he murmured. His voice was distant, like someone recalling an old wound. Claire glanced at him curiously but said nothing, sensing it wasn't her place to ask. When they reached Franklin and 3rd, Claire's heart sank at the sight of her boss standing outside the diner, checking his watch with a scowl. She turned to Daniel, fumbling in her purse. I don't have much, but can I give you something for gas?" Her fingers closed around a crumpled $5 bill. Daniel looked at her, expression unreadable, and then shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. You've got enough on your plate." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I'm sorry you've been going through all this. I hope things turn around for you soon." She smiled weakly, brushing a damp curl from her forehead. "Thank you, for the ride, and for not making me feel small for asking." With one last grateful look, Claire stepped out into the rain and disappeared into the diner, Mason still sleeping against her shoulder. Daniel sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the empty passenger seat. His throat felt tight. It had been exactly 3 years to the day since he'd lost Emily, his wife, his best friend, his tether. A drunk driver had taken her life on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Since then, despite his towering skyscrapers, multi-million-dollar deals, and endless accolades, Daniel Wallace had been living in quiet, suffocating emptiness. His title as CEO of Wallace Industries meant little in the hollow chambers of grief. He'd driven that route today by pure chance, or so he thought. But maybe it hadn't been chance at all. Maybe there was a reason that a struggling single mother had flagged down a lonely millionaire on the worst day of the year. The next morning, Daniel found himself parked outside the diner. He didn't know why he'd come. Curiosity, perhaps. Or something deeper. Through the fogged window, he saw Claire balancing 3 plates on her arm, smiling wearily at a table of customers. Even exhausted, she radiated resilience. Strength born of necessity. Over the next few weeks, Daniel returned often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just to sit in the corner booth and watch quietly. They exchanged small talk. Slowly, gently, a fragile friendship began to grow. He never flaunted his wealth, never hinted at the empire he ran from the top floor of the glass tower downtown. Claire simply knew him as Daniel, the quiet man with kind eyes who tipped generously and listened when no one else did. One evening, after the dinner rush, Claire sat across from him, her hands curled around a chipped mug. "You know," she said softly, "I used to dream of bigger things. I wanted to be a nurse. But dreams don't always fit real life, do they?" Her smile was wistful, but not bitter. "Mason is my world now. That's enough." Daniel's chest ached. He'd spent years drowning in self-pity, shutting out the world, convinced nothing could fill the void Emily had left. Yet here was Claire, with far less, still standing, still giving, still loving. Her quiet bravery stirred something dormant in him. 2 weeks later, Claire's world tilted on its axis again. She came home from the diner to find an envelope taped to her apartment door. Inside was a letter, short, simple, but impossible to comprehend at first. "Claire. I believe in second chances. For dreams. For life. For people who deserve more than what the world has handed them. Please accept this scholarship to the nursing program at Boston Community College. Your tuition, books, and childcare expenses are covered. I'll be rooting for you. With admiration and respect. Daniel Wallace." Underneath his name was a business card. CEO, Wallace Industries. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the step, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The man who had quietly sat in her diner booth all these weeks, was one of the wealthiest men in the state. She found him the next morning in his usual booth, coffee in hand. He smiled gently as she approached, no trace of arrogance or expectation. "Why?" Her voice broke. "Why would you do this for me?" Daniel's gaze softened, the weight of his own sorrows reflected in her eyes. "Because, once upon a time, someone gave me a second chance when I thought my life was over. And because helping you reminded me that maybe, just maybe, my heart isn't as broken as I thought it was." He swallowed hard. "You helped me more than you know." That moment, sitting across from each other in a tiny corner diner, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that pain, when shared with compassion, could be transformed into purpose. Over the next year, Claire flourished. Balancing nursing school, Mason, and work was grueling, but she attacked it with the same quiet strength she'd always carried. Daniel cheered her on from the sidelines, sometimes as a friend, sometimes as Mason's favorite babysitter, and eventually, as something more. The night Claire graduated, Mason perched on Daniel's shoulders, clapping wildly as her name echoed across the auditorium. Later, under the soft glow of the streetlights, Daniel took her hand in his eyes misty but hopeful. "You didn't just ask me for a ride that day, Claire. You gave me one. Back to life." They both smiled through tears, two people who'd been broken in different ways, finding healing not through grand gestures or perfect lives, but through simple kindness and quiet, unwavering presence. And as Mason's laughter echoed between them, it was clear that sometimes, the most unexpected encounters could stitch together hearts that had long forgotten how to hope. Because in the end, humanity's greatest currency isn't wealth or power, it's the willingness to see each other, to lift one another up, and to believe that even the smallest act of compassion can change a life forever.